sit back rooting for the villain. You enter the Big House Breakdown. Let's go. Peace. You have seen and you are watching the Big House Breakdown post-game reaction show to the Michigan Wolverines Penn State game that the Michigan Wolverines dominated. Score doesn't indicate it, but if you saw the game, you saw how it was Michigan versus everybody running Tings. Yeah, man. I had to put the JJ McCarthy picture up there where he's waving bye-bye to in the shoe to the Zero State fans, and then he did the same thing yesterday in the same jersey, saying bye-bye to the Cootie Cat fans. That's right, the Penn State Nittany Lion fans waving bye-bye. It's been nice, but gotta go. Right? That's right. We're talking about this win, this colossal win, this 24-15 win. Now, it sounds like the first quarter of a college basketball game, but it's not, because I'm sitting here coffee sipping, think about this ass whipping. Right? We do the show. That's right. Our Reaction Sunday shows don't have a picture of me or video, but we will show certain pictures and we will give insightful commentary about the game. You know what I mean? Because we were running things. The combination of Blake the Great, the Don, who returns, the return of the Don, and JJ McCarthy, JJ Mack, as we call him on this channel. And then, of course, you see Will Johnson as he put the handcuffs on whoever he faced during the game. So we're here to get into it. We're here to look into it like we're supposed to do it. And let's get right into it. The Michigan versus Penn State reaction show. Thanks for joining us. We know you could have been everywhere, but you decided to come in here and check out the Big House Breakdown and our post-game reaction show. So I'm your host, Vic. Thanks for coming through. And the Empire struck back yesterday. Yes, it did. And like I said earlier, I'm sitting here coffee sipping, thinking about this ass whipping that we put on the Penn State Cootie Cats and the political ass whooping that we put on the FBS, all the media pundits and all the people and all the coaches and all the ADs that did not take Michigan football seriously. You know what I'm saying? Y'all might think twice when we say and when we do this and we don't throw a pass in the entire second half just to beat that ass. And yeah, I'm going to say it. Because when you put together a political hit job, a political setup job, a political smear job, in the way that FBS media, coaches, and ADs in the Big Ten have done, that leads to the suspension of a coach like Jim Harbaugh that didn't even get due process. Well, now you just reaching levels of nasty. The collusion is illegal. All of it is illegal, especially if you don't have due process, and you're violating your own Big Ten policies, which say you cannot act in penalty unless the NCAA is included there or concluded their investigation. But we're here for the outcome of the game, and I want to talk about the very first big play, and that was how Blake Corum, we had some shaky starts, right? But Blake Corum rushed to the Michigan 39 for 3 yards. Why is that play outstanding? because he how he did it with fashion. He led that run, right? And then you have, second quarter comes up. Blake Corum gets in the end zone, you know, scores 3 yards out. Great execution, great play. Um, we had to go to a run heavy situation only because our offensive tackles were getting that work. Chop Robinson decided to actually play. He decided to actually contribute to the game. Him, Adisa, and other Penn State defenders were getting to JJ McCarthy before he could even drop back and set up a pass play. You know what I mean? Donovan Edwards um, got a touchdown for 22 yards. That was timely, making it 13-3. That really signaled the return of the Don, right? And how this sort of a game he had to, you know, develop into as the season went on. It wasn't easy for him. He was getting tackled in the open field by a lot of shoestring efforts, right? The ankle, the knee, the leg, as he was recovering from his, you know, knee surgery, as it were. So, you know, sometimes, especially running backs, they need that time to reacclimate themselves into what they're supposed to do as an athlete. And it was just around this time last year, the last quarter of the season, that Donovan Edwards started pouring it on. So buckle up, folks. Buckle up, Michigan fans, college football fans, because the Don is back. Not only is he back in the running game, he's back in the passing game. And that makes Michigan ultra unique and ultra multifaceted. Um, Drew Aller got into the end zone on a quarterback sneak or a quarterback design run, right? And of course, if you looked at Twitter or any other replay outlet, you saw how Mason Graham and others were being held ridiculously. But because we were in Happy Valley, that we made sad, right? But because we were in Happy Valley, that was the outcome. Um, but your man Franklin, Dizzy Franklin, as I call him, right? He went for a 2-point conversion right there when he could have just took the points. And might I add that uh, the short yardage play calling and decision making. I don't know if it was his offensive coordinator or him. That shit sucked. And that was a knock. That was definitely an I told you so moment. And there's a lot of things that I'm going to go over and a lot of I told you so moments on the Big House breakdown as we break this game all the way down. Then James Turner for Michigan hits a 22-yard field goal attempt that makes the game 17-9. Now, this would exist for quite a long time, okay? Well into the fourth quarter, okay? Notwithstanding a couple of really good Donovan Edwards runs, Blake Corum again rushes into the end zone on a breakout carry for 30 yards and a score, making it 23-9. Now, what's interesting about the Blake Corum score is it capped off a day where Michigan ran for almost 240 yards, almost, right? But it's well over 200 yards. And the impression that they made, I liken it to a comet or an asteroid falling to Earth. And you know how at certain levels of the atmosphere, it gets hot and it heats up, but it's falling steady and it's falling fast. And the gravity is coming to it and the elements are hitting it. And that object is getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter as it breaks through every barrier, every barrier, every barrier. Well, when Blake Corum scored that touchdown from 30 yards out, and the way that he did it, awesome. He also had a run in the middle of the game where he might have made 2 or 3 jump cuts. So impressive. He looks like the Blake Corum of old. And that's what you get when you're patient with the run game, like Shamar Moore was. If you're creative with it, with the formations and how you spread people out, and how effective you are with your blocking schemes, and you're patient with it. See, this reminds me of the old school Giants when they were winning their championships. You had to you had to have 3 yards in a cloud of dust on consecutive runs. You might have even got hit in the backfield. You might have even got blown up like Blake Corum did from that Penn State defender, which is why he was bleeding from his face after the game. But do you think that changed his mind? He got blown up a couple of times during that game. Really tough runner, man. But you got to stick with the 3 yards in a cloud of dust so that you could break through those layers, defensive line, linebackers, and then eventually into the secondary, and then eventually into the end zone because you stuck with the run. And it became like a comet breaking through the barriers of the atmosphere from outer space, heating up, heating up, heating up. And then once it hits that ground, boom, explosion. And what's interesting about that is they didn't even run Khalil Mullins. Man, could you imagine how we would have worn that ass out if we got Khalil Mullins going in the run game? We would have put up another score. Oh, for sure. If we'd have got Khalil Mullins going in that on that running that left side, we would have spanked that ass. Now, this is not all to say that it was a blowout or it was some, whack game because Penn State defense kept their offense in the game. They provided plenty of stops, plenty of punts, plenty of opportunities for the Penn State offense to hold its own nuts, get and matriculate down the field and put points on the board. But they were only able to muster, a couple of field goals and a touchdown late. So that's why you get the 15-point score. And Will Johnson defeated or batted down or prevented 2 extra point conversions by the Penn State Nittany Lions. And the goofy arm, right? The goofy gun of Drew Aller. That's right, I say goofy gun because he got a gun. I'm not gonna act like the young man don't have what it takes to be successful talent-wise, but he doesn't have what it takes to be successful mentally and especially in the cast of characters that's with him on the Penn State offense. Now, what I would have done is I would have put some of them running backs in that receiver. Now, see, that's imagination. I would have kept some of them tight ends in for max protect, and I would have motioned some of those running backs, Nick Singleton that has a burst. Once you get him going, though, I would have motioned him into an offensive slot position or an outside slot position that would have had us moving one of our linebackers over him. And now you can create a mismatch on the outskirts of the passing formation. But of course, James Franklin is not that talented. He's not that offensive centric. And I don't know if he denied his offensive coordinator an opportunity to do that, or he just doesn't have that sort of coaching and creativity on his staff. So I find it really interesting that is what popped off. I don't know, man. The Rape State Nittany Lions, they need to. I don't know if they need to hire another offensive coordinator or they need to fire Franklin. I don't think firing Franklin is the answer because Franklin is a really good defensive and lineman recruiter. Um, I don't know if that's the answer, but I know the answer is a coaching change. I do know that. And I did hear breaking news. I did hear that they got rid of and they fired one of their assistant coaches. So I'm not sure what that is about. Look forward to Friday's episode of you know, the preview of the Maryland game, while I review the Penn State game. When I get more confirmation on whether who that was that they fired, then we'll talk about the actual particulars in detail. But I would have definitely got, somebody needs to go. Somebody needs to fall on their sword that for the third year in a row, they can't defeat the elite teams of the Big Ten, which is Michigan Wolverines and Ohio State Zero Nears, right? Um, the reason why I said it in that order is because Michigan is the defending two-time champ. So they don't get to, Zero State doesn't get to be mentioned before Michigan. They get to be, Michigan gets that mention because they earned it. If Georgia earned the benefit of the doubt because they national champions two times in a row, then Michigan certainly gets the benefit of the doubt because they won the Big Ten two times in a row. But that is not what Tony Petitti thinks, and we will get to him and the Michigan politics of it all in a minute. Now, the offensive standouts was obviously Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards participating in three running touchdowns, running Tings. Then you have JJ McCarthy that started that whole thing. He started the marathon, right? That means our ability to run all over Rape State. That's right. I didn't forget Rape State. I said it. Put it in a DM if you don't like it. Anyway, so as he, there was a little bit of, you know, quarterback intentional run game happening. There was a little bit of, RPO happening. There was a little bit of option run happening. And they even called a QB power that didn't work so well. But I'm gonna say this, man. Our linemen got to be knee benders. We're very good at blocking straight ahead, but when we're pulling, man, you got to get your big behind down like you're squatting and clear people out on those pull and pin runs so that JJ doesn't get smacked like that. He got really smacked on that one QB power. And if we're gonna run stuff like that against JTT in Ohio State, we need to be able, our linemen need to be able to put their body and their physicality into what they're doing when they pin and pull. But we get into the rest of it, man. We get into the rest of it. It's a Michigan post game review that we beat the Cootie Cats, the Penn State Cootie Cats, 24-15 post game review. JJ was passing light, but he was very efficient. He only, missed one pass all game. So his efficiency stats and his QBR rating will still be very high. I believe he was 7 for 8, something like that, or 6 for 7, one of the two. Wasn't for a lot of yards because we put on the Taz show where we chewed up that clock and we chewed up the ground game. Love the strategy by Sharon Moore to effectively eat up the entire third quarter effectively. So maybe you only get a third quarter out of, maybe you only get a field goal out of eating up the third quarter, but you make an impact on the game. Love that part. You ate up clock. You kept that offense on the field. You made the young boy, you made the young boy Alar, who everybody was going to crown this kid as the best quarterback in the Big Ten in the preseason. They crowned this kid only to find out that J.J. Mack was the big deal that Michigan told them all along. So, other standouts offensively was our wide receivers blocking down the field. How about it? Um, what's interesting in this day and age of spread football and lollipop football, rainbow football, throw the ball everywhere, throw the ball 90 times a game, a lot of receivers would get attitudes like, I'm trying to make it to the league, my G. We need to throw that rock, especially the year that Roman Wilson had with 10 touchdowns on the season. You would think he would throw a hissy fit. You would think that he would be upset, him and Cornelius Johnson, because this is their last hoorah. This is their last ride in the amazing blue helmet. But you think that bothered them? Nope. Because what happened at the end of the game? Roman Wilson had the ball in his hand at the end of the game. And he raised that ball high, even though his job was to be a lineman the whole game. It was to block them boys. It was the motion hard, motion the Penn State defense in and out of position, just so he could block King, the corner, out of position to make any difference in the game. So if he didn't make a difference catching the football, he certainly made a difference and won the matchup because King was ineffective on those long runs that we had. The 30-yard run for Blake Corum, and then the 22-yard run that broke the game open for Donovan Edwards. That dude was inefficient. You know what I'm saying? And our wide receivers deserve a lot of credit because they had to put in a lineman's type of workday blocking downfield for the Michigan Wolverines. And now that's a gift that keeps on giving because we could switch modes as a team anytime we want. We could switch modes. We could beat you up on the ground or we could beat you up in the air. We are a complete unit. We are a complete team. The Michigan's Wolverines. And like Wolverine used to say, and I'm going to say it to the rest of the teams in the Big Ten, he put them claws in the air and say, feeling lucky, punk? We coming, man. We coming. All right. So we know it was a running Tings type of day for the Michigan Wolverines on offense. Let's talk about the Michigan Wolverines on defense. Man, did the linebackers bring the thump. But before we talk about the linebackers, I want to talk about Kenneth Grant. That's a baby mountain right there, man. 325 pounds chasing down a Penn State running back that runs a 4.4. Talk to me. Somebody talk Michigan to me. Come on, man. So now it don't look like just bragging when Jim Harbaugh said that him and Mason Graham were a gift from the football gods. 325 pounds chasing down a 4.4 running back, out of control. Love seeing that. Love seeing Kenneth Grant make them tackles as soon as the game started. Love seeing that as well. He set it off for the Michigan defense, and the Michigan defense did a much better job tackling those streak runs. Penn State got a couple of joints. Penn State got a couple of loose runs here and there. But, we have that bend but don't break concept to what we do. And Kenneth Grant was very active. So was Mason Graham. And so was Jenkins. And, man, we need to put these Michigan or these Big Ten refs on notice. If you see a hold, call the holding. Stop looking at it and acting like you don't know what you're looking at. Or you know what you're looking at when Michigan false starts. Or when Michigan does a pass interference, you know what you're looking at then. But when two people on the same side that the play is going to holds and drags defenders into the ground, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. I'm wearing my cap right now. If I had my camera on, you would see me wearing a Michigan cap right now because I was just totally capped to the 100th power. You know what I mean? So for all of y'all who just tuned in or wondering what you're watching, you are watching the Big House Breakdown. I'm your host, Vic. We talk all things Michigan football, and this is a post-game reaction show to the Michigan Wolverines defeating the Penn State Cootie Cats 24-15, by which Michigan almost ran for 250 yards on the ground. Didn't pass the ball at all in the second half, like Bo Schembechler was coaching the team. And instead of Jimmy, right, maybe the ghost of Bo Schembechler was on the sideline and was like, nah, I'm running. Right? And then they got back. Oh, but Blake Corum just got hit and his nose is bleeding. He'll be all right. Just running again. You know what I'm saying? So that, in my mind, that's what I thought Bo Schembechler would sound like Rocky's trainer. Just get him, Rock. Yeah, man, we here for it. I'm here for it. It is the Big House Breakdown post-game show of the Penn State Michigan game. So we talked about how the running backs did their thing. J.J. McCarthy set it off with his wheels. He got kind of rocked, which kind of, made Sharon Moore say, hey, I'm just going to put it in the lap of my two superstar backs. They haven't had their best game yet. And then they turned around to do so yesterday during the noon kickoff game. So now we start talking about defensive standouts. I love the game by Rayshon Benny. Come on, man. That young man came to play. I'm so proud of him, man. I remember during the about 2 seasons ago, Rayshon Benny was making a lot of mistakes. He was jumping offside. He was a young, frisky freshman who has some talent, who has some speed, and a great first burst off the ball, to turning around and smacking the shit out of Drew Aller and causing that fumble. Man, did that fumble come timely and shut down a drive that might have made the difference in the momentum in the game. Man, that thing was dope. If I had the picture of it, I'd put it up. But unfortunately, I don't. I couldn't find it. I scoured the internet to find it. Couldn't find that particular pick. But when I do net for Friday preview episode, I will definitely put that up, because that joker made all the difference. And then, of course, the DBs played a great game. I like the game by Rod Moore. I love the game by Will the Thrill Johnson. You know what I mean? Quentin Johnson should have got his hands on that pick. Sometimes you got to run through the ball, not just meet the ball. And if you run through the ball instead of meeting the ball, then perhaps he gets 2 hands on that ball and he makes that thing happen, which would have put the game to bed, and Penn State probably wouldn't have even scored that last touchdown. So out of the secondary, I like Mike Sanderstill's game, Will Johnson's game, Rod Moore's game, and Quentin Johnson's game. Really, really good to see. Oh, and Josh Wallace played a really good game as well. Our DBs came to play, man. And I mean, if you can't get up for this statement type of a game, what type of game can you get up for? You know what I'm saying? They made the Penn State receivers look like Smurfs out there. You know what I mean? And then also from the linebackers, I love the thump game, man. Mikey Barrett with the thump game came through. Junior Colson with the thump game came through. In the hammer, Ernest Hausman with the thump game came through on different plays. I will have pictures for you in Friday's preview episode. I promise, promise, promise. But for now, you were just going to hear about it. You know what I'm saying? Them dudes came through with that thump game. Super proud of them. Super proud of ignoring all the distractions and all of the BS. Because Mike McDonald not Mike McDonald, Jesse Minter, who taught Mike McDonald, or who gave the defensive scheme to Mike McDonald. I'm sure there was some teaching going on there too. He runs a pretty complex scheme. And I'm sure those game plans are not light. I'm sure there's a lot that goes on in those meetings for you to be acclimated to a pretty dynamic game plan, especially this time during the year when he kind of throws the kitchen sink at them, both coverage wise and in the front seven. So for those guys to have the, wherewithal to memorize the game plan and execute it while going through the shitstorm of political crap that's going on right now, that everybody's putting a bullseye on Michigan's back. Love the fact that our players said, bet that, got that for you. Love it. Love the moxie. Love the togetherness that they showed. And honestly, that's what ball is all about, man. That's what team ball is all about. So now let's go to the defensive line, because there was so many people on the defensive line that had a game. So I talked about Kenneth Grant, talked about Rajon Benny. Now let's talk about the glove. Let's talk about Thanos, and that's Mason Graham. Now, he had a redemption kind of game because in the first quarter and early second quarter, because he had the one hand, Mason Graham could only club through, and he has to take a side. And that's really bad for one technique to take a side, because if the play is blocking in a certain direction and you happen to take a play to the opposite side that the play is blocking, you can get yourself washed out of the play. But he came back in the second and the third quarter with some quality moments and some quality stops versus Allen and Singleton, and really made an impact in the game. I thought his hurries were steady, and I thought he put some work on that guard center guard exchange for Penn State that was really weak. I thought Mason Graham gave them boys some work, similar to the way that our defensive tackles gave Ohio State's guard center guard combination on Ohio State during the game last year some real work. And it wound up being a difference in the game because it was an intimidation point or intimidation perspective that really wins you football games. You know what I mean? Because those linemen aren't robots. They're people, and they get defeated like any other position group on the field would get defeated. Right? So let's continue. So Mason Graham had a good redemption game. And Chris Jenkins was solid. Wasn't crazy about his game. I'll give his game a solid B, right? Mason Graham got a solid B, whereas Rajon Benny, Cam Good, and Kenneth Grant got almost A minus type of games. I didn't like Derek Moore's performance, but I think he was held a couple of times by Fashano, which is the tackle for Penn State. But I love Jalen Harrell's pressure game. Jalen Harrell was there got pressure on Drew Aller a couple of times. And even the last drive that had, Drew Aller with the goofy gun, was because of Jalen Harrell's pressure. So I think let me look at the stats real quick. Let me see if I can pull up the stats on defense to see if they mention. So Jalen Harrell had a sack. I think he had about 3 or 4 pressures, 3 tackles, and 2 assisted tackles. So 5 tackles involved. I wish CBS would run the stats on. Mikey Barrett was very active with 5 tackles. Junior Colson was very active. Let's see who else was very active. Makari Page, he made a really good hit on a Penn State receiver in the third quarter. That was really pivotal on a drive that they were doing. A lot of intimidation style points coming from the Michigan Wolverine defense that holds on to the title as the #1 defense in college football. Let's continue, man. Let's continue. I want to get into something, and it's called the I Told You So segment, right? The Empire Strikes Back, and I told you so. How did I tell you so? Well, there were certain things that I mentioned in the pregame show that came to fruition. And I'm just going to mention them, man, because my pregame analyst was pretty good and pretty spot on. What am I talking about? Well, I told you that 64 for Penn State gets flustered on combo blitzes. And sure enough, in the game, lots of pressures coming right in that guard center guard gap. Michigan scouted it the way I reviewed it on the game tape. And that was just reviewing the Indiana game and reviewing the Ohio State game. I told you that 77 could be had, and he was had. Rajon Benny had a game versus 77. Fashanu got beat on a sack by Harrell, and he also got beat on a pressure, which gave Allard a goofy gun, right? Then I also scouted that on third and short. Penn State was really erratic in their short game, right? I mentioned that I didn't like that three wishbone running back thing in the backfield, and how they line it up. I thought it was corny. I thought it was a waste of time and too predictable, and it didn't really yield a lot of dividends for them. And the reason why, as a football analyst, you don't want to do that is because you have 3 or 4 of your best players in the backfield, 4 or 5 yards deep, and they have to travel those 4 or 5 yards just to get to the line of scrimmage to be effective. So, and then you limit blocking that way, right? And they even got Penn State, the Cootie Cats, they got a penalty for having too many men in the backfield. So now you're prone to those type of things. I also mentioned that their secondary was prone to errors. What would that you say? I told you about King, the linebacker, and I said that that Loveland, he was mossed by Stover from Ohio State during their game, and I scouted that, watched it on the tape, and I said that's going to open up opportunities for Loveland. And even though Loveland didn't catch the pass, he got a big pass interference off of that, and that also shifted the field. And pushing the one gap and the two gaps rattled Allard. That was true. Now we didn't get to see 23-5 and Dixon get beat in the passing game, but we did see that they were ineffective in the run game. We did see that. We did see our Michigan receivers blocking the tail off, and we saw that 23-5 and number 3 were ineffective versus the run game. And it's not just a DB's job to break passes up. It's also their job to tackle ball carriers. I said that Donovan Edwards would have a big game. I was right about that. We said that Penn State needed to make better offensive choices in their short game. I was right about that. And I also said that 51 and the left side of that right side rather of that Penn State defensive line was weak as tissue paper, booty paper, right? I said they were booty paper. They turned out to be soft. On all of the not Donovan Edwards, on all of actually Donovan Edwards cut back after going to the left on an inside run where everybody blocked down. Donovan Edwards started left, got into the frame, and then kicked it out right to the right side and ran for 22 yards because the run fits were terrible. And then, of course, Blake had 2 big runs to the left side. The one in the second quarter, I believe, where he got out and ran for 40 yards. And then, of course, the score toward the end of the game that sealed the deal. So I told you that Penn State was tissue paper on the left side. The right side in Michigan took advantage of that, running to the left. I also said that the Penn State wide receivers weren't good in scramble moments versus elite competition. I said that. It came true. So tune in every Friday when I do my reviews and my preview game shows, because we tell it like it is. I do a fair amount of scouting. I coached a good portion. I coach football a good portion of my life, so I know what I'm talking about, right? Um, there's some other mentions for the I told you so segment, and let me see if I could pull that up. Um, okay, it wasn't that. And let me see if this is one. Yeah. So I told you that a weak schedule does not define Michigan season. As much as all of the ESPNs and the Josh Pates and the Fine Bombs and the Booty Bombs and the Stephen A's and all the talking bobbleheads got something to say, I told you that a weak schedule or a schedule of Big Ten teams that isn't top 10 does not define Michigan's season. Why? Because they return 80% of their starters and their depth on the team. And that sort of unity and continuity just can't be beat and fucked with. And we saw it. Even though all of the political pundits and all of the political commentators wanted Penn State to win so badly. Oh, you lucky it's not a night out. Because if it's a whiteout at night, Michigan is going to be in bad shape, man. What are you talking about? That's what you heard. When all Michigan did last year was roll on Penn State, and all they did this year is bring the cold wind and roll in Zoom, running things, right? And I told y'all also that Michigan running backs did not have their best game yet. I said, watch out for that. The Michigan running game has not had its best game of the season yet. And all you did was piss off two of the best athletes, two of the, all American athletes on our team, and Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. And I also told you that Penn State had better run blockers than pass blockers. So again, man, tune into that Big House breakdown episode, preview episode that I have every week. Sometimes I have Adam from Michigan Football Rants on, and we chop it up. Go tune into that. That was a really good episode that we just put out. And this will conclude our post game reaction show to um, the Penn State versus Michigan game. Michigan was running Tings, right? Um, One last thing I want to talk about before we bounce, right, is I just heard recently that there was a Sports Illustrated article. Haven't read it, but I heard ruminations that Michigan Board of Regents, right, their board of directors, if you will, is thinking about leaving the Big Ten. Conference realignment is here, right? Conference realignment is here. And they were thinking about leaving the Big Ten because the Big Ten suspended Coach Jim Harbaugh without due process, ultimately violating their own Big Ten policies on athletics and college sports. So, that's really interesting. And that adds fuel to the fire. 11 Michigan legislators have put in or seeking an injunction to get Jim Harbaugh uh, alleviated from the fine that he was under with and that he's undergoing regarding the team. And Jim Harbaugh is such a good coach, man, because he could just be like, yo, bunk that. I'm gonna go on a sideline anyway. Somebody stop me. And he didn't do that. He said, I'm gonna take this L because I know my team deserves a chance. My super seniors that came back, who probably have to pay for their own apartments, pay for their own tuition on campus because they're outside of the scholarship bounds of paying for school for them. They decided to come back, pay their own freight, and win a national championship with Michigan. He decided to give those kids a chance so that they can be all that they can be and go down in college infamy. Do I think Michigan is a complete team? Absolutely. Do I think we're college football's most complete team? Absolutely, especially considering what we are up against with the rumors and the political smear campaign, the anti due process train that's running around college football. I definitely think that we can we use it as, you know, we use all of the scandal as, total package energy or Red Bull or Gatorade. It's fuel for the fire. You know what I mean? And Michigan certainly showed that fire running Tings as we did against the Penn State Cootie Cats. If you like that, I got more for you. Tune in to the Big House Breakdown. Yeah, so Michigan is thinking about leaving the Big Ten, taking all that bread, taking that cash cow. And if you leave the Big Ten and maybe you go to the SEC or the Big 12, that would be the end of the game. I don't know if it is or not, but it was certainly impacted. And I don't know if Ohio State and their, board of directors, if you will, is ready for that to happen. You ready to give up TV money on 20 million people tuning in simply because you don't want to give a coach due process in an investigation about sign stealing that you can't even prove? Wow. Very interesting. We are going to have to tune in for the national ramifications of that. But now I said, sitting and illing and rooting for the villain. Huh. And that's the Michigan Wolverines, man. That's the Michigan Wolverines. So I'm your man, Vic. This is the post-game reaction show on the Big House Breakdown, the throne of college football. Two-time Michigan Big Ten championships. The most wins in college football. We will see you later.